So what's the truth behind firearm background checks? Are they helpful in stopping crime, or they're just a talking point for people who've been misled by the anti-gun narrative? The people who call for universal background checks are typically the same people who say, I don't know what we need to do, but we need to do something. They've been taught to fear guns and that violating their fellow citizens' rights is okay if the media tells them so. Now, the NICS background check system was supposed to be the one thing that would stop crime and make the gun grabbers feel better. Well, what we find is that people who are committed to violence are not dissuaded in the least by a background check. They simply avoid it altogether. The firearm background check system has been nothing more than a large, inefficient system that slows down the sale of firearms and often prevents good people from being able to exercise their Second Amendment right while doing nothing to stop violence, crime, and murder. After going through a background check and getting denied, you wonder how this could have happened. I've never committed a crime, never been arrested, and never had so much as a speeding ticket. So how does the background check system fail? Well, first, by not stopping criminals. Bad guys will get guns regardless of how many background checks the good guys have to go through. Second, over 95% of background check denials are false positives. So what does this mean? It means good people are being denied their right to purchase a firearm for no good reason. These denials can be triggered by many things, including mistakes on a background check application, similar name or social security number to a convicted felon, or many other illegitimate reasons for denial. Back in 2017, the Government Accountability Office released a study of 8,606,286 NICS background checks. Of those 8.6 million background checks, there were 112,090 denials. Now, the anti-gun crowd sees this number as a success, spewing the ridiculous notion that 112,090 mass shootings were stopped. Well, this couldn't be further from the truth. Of the 112,090 denials, there were only 12,710 investigations. Now, the anti-gun crowd says, well, at least we stopped 12,710 mass murderers. Not so fast. This tells us that the vast majority of the denials were false positives, or cases that were unworthy of further investigation for one reason or another. But the gun grabbers failed to acknowledge that. In other words, good people were being denied their right to purchase a firearm. So let's talk about those 12,710 investigations. Of the 112,090 denials, only 12,710 were investigated, and only 12 people who should not have been purchasing a firearm were prosecuted. That's right, only 12. So now the anti-gun crowd chimes in and says, see, we stopped 12 mass shooters. Well, wrong again. What you've done is prevented 112,078 people from being able to purchase a firearm, possibly putting them and their families in danger for your politically motivated agenda. And if the 12 people who were prosecuted were cold-blooded killers, wouldn't they have already been in jail? And if not, why not? This alone should raise a red flag with everyone about how flawed, corrupt, or even politically biased our legal system is. Everytown for Gun Safety and other anti-gun lobby groups were celebrating when a 2020 report came out stating that over 300,000 people were denied firearm purchases in America during that year. Now, the truth is, the vast majority of those denied were also good people, and the reason for the increase in denials was that there was a massive increase in firearm purchases. The false denial percentage rate hadn't changed from previous years, and the increased numbers were most likely due to new purchases in response to the violent left-wing riots of that year. People knew they were in danger from groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, rioting and burning down cities across the country. So many who had never been gun owners decided that in fact they needed a gun to protect themselves during the politically driven chaos. Unfortunately, the failed background check system is in place, and gun owners across the country are subjected to it. But that's not enough for the gun grabbers. Even after we tell them their system is deeply flawed and it only works to prevent good people from exercising their Second Amendment right, they double down. They actually use the failed system that they celebrated as an excuse to push for even more background checks. They think more of the same bad policy will fix the problem, and that leaves only one more place to go. That's the serialization and registration by the way of background checks for every firearm transfer taking place. Yes, if they had their way, this would include handing down a gun to your son or daughter, exchanging guns with friends, and possibly even sharing a gun at the range being subjected to a background check and reporting of the transaction to the government. Now, they call it a universal background check, but it's really an invasion of privacy and violation of the Second Amendment, resulting in a big list of gun owners, their guns, and the home addresses where they can be found. This is the exact opposite of what our founding fathers wanted when they wrote the Second Amendment. Do you think, after winning the Revolutionary War, our founders thought it was a good idea to give the king a list of all their firearms and the addresses where they could be found? See, we know a universal background check system would equate to nothing more than a big fat gun registry. Now, we already have some states like New York who have brought the background check system in-house to their state police department, ultimately putting every gun purchaser in New York State on a statewide list. In March of 2023, Gun Owners of America issued a strong rebuke of President Biden's speech in Monterey Park, California, where he signed an executive order to further his goal of requiring universal background registration checks on gun purchases. Eric Pratt, GOA's senior vice president, issued the following statement. The current background check system is ineffective and 9 out of 10 times falsely flags someone as ineligible to purchase. Instead of expanding the requirements to harass people who sell as few as just one firearm in a given year, this administration should be focusing their attention on keeping bad actors locked away, like the D.C. police chief openly stated just last week. Guns will continue to fall into the wrong hands as long as politicians and bureaucrats fail to acknowledge the real elephant in the room: violent criminals freely walking the streets. Our Second Amendment does not read, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," as long as all guns are registered and reported to the government. It also doesn't call for a government-issued permission slip through a background check system to purchase a firearm. Our founders believed owning and carrying firearms was and should be common practice, and the bad guys were to be kept in jail. It seems now the exact opposite is being normalized. Left-wing politicians are letting the criminals out of jail and putting gun restrictions on the good guys. Thanks for watching Bullet Points. I'm Dan Wass for Gun Owners Foundation. You can find more Second Amendment content and updates at gunowners.com.